Good morning and welcome to M.O.P classroom. Today we are going to study or we will discuss about the Indian Constitution. So if somebody asks you what is Constitution, how are you going to define it or what are you going to say? A Constitution is nothing but a guiding principle, laws for the country where you all are going to reside. Now let us see. Indian Constitution is one of the most admired constitution. You know why? It was during 1946, when we were still not independent, Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, the then Prime Minister of India, decided to form a Constituent Assembly with B.R. Ambedkar as a chairman. So he and his other colleagues sat down and borrowed all the good features of all other constitutions. Amalgamation happened and then we got our Constitution. So the Constitution was passed in the year 1949 on 26 November and it came into force on 26 January. And that is how we celebrate the Republic Day in India. Now let us go to the preamble. Now why do we study preamble? You should know that. What is a preamble? It is an introductory statement to the document. It actually gives us the information on what are the sources of the Constitution, who are the makers of the Constitution, what beliefs, what feelings they had when they framed the Constitution, and what are the different sources from which we have borrowed the best features of our Constitution. Here, I am not going to read the preamble, but remember, when you attempt any question or when you try to answer or write a short note on the preamble, make sure you don't make any changes in the words provided. You have to read and write word to word the way it is mentioned in our Constitution. Now let us go to the history part. As I said, it is the document which gives us the objectives of the Constitution. Okay, it gives us the intention, why they framed this kind of a Constitution, and also gives us the values, certain principles of the Constitution. It basically gives us the idea on sources, nature of the Indian country, statement of all the objectives, and also when and how it was adopted. Now here comes the main part of their preamble as why we have included all these words in the preamble. First, when we talk about we the people of India, you can make out the ultimate sovereignty in India, the right to vote and the right to decide who will be at the apex of the executive is decided by the people of India. Sovereign means we have the entire authority in our own hands. We don't actually accept any dictates from any other country. That is called sovereignty. When we talk about socialist, when we say socialist, it is a kind of having faith in an economy where both public and private players have equal say. When we say secular, which is something very, very important, especially in today's times, we talk about all religions, and in India, you're free to have faith, practice, propagate any religion of your own choice. When we say democratic, it is a country which is run by the will of the people, and every person has the right to vote. When we talk about republic, always remember the head of the country, the head of the state is elected by the people again. So these are certain words. When you write or when you study the preamble, you should mention all these words and give the meaning for each. Another thing which is very, very important when we talk about our Indian Constitution, you should always remember that we have borrowed the best features of a lot of other countries. Now let us go through one by one. Government of India Act 1935, that was the first, I would say it is a kind of a guiding principle for the Constitution. Fundamental rights and judicial review, yes, from the American Constitution. Directive principles, which are certain directives, which all these features we'll be discussing in details when we start with discussing the features of the Indian Constitution, has been taken from Ireland. Federation, with a strong center, which we have, the kind of system that we have here, is borrowed from Canada. Then we have Indian Preamble, the liberty, equality, fraternity. These words I am sure you all must have heard when you have studied about the French Revolution. So from the French Constitution, we have borrowed these words. We also received about our concurrent list and the joint sitting that we have in the Parliament from Australia. And very, very important, which the Constitution gives us the provisions for amendment and also the election of members of the Rajya Sabha, that has been taken from the Constitution of South Africa. And a very, very important thing you all must be aware, all fundamental rights gets completely taken away, or I would say suspended during the situation of emergency, and that is taken from the German Constitution. So these are certain very, very important sources when you write about or when you read about the Indian Constitution, you should first know from which countries we have taken or borrowed these features. Then comes the objective of Indian Constitution. One thing you should all remember, that India is a very, very unique country, right? With a very rich historical, cultural heritage, a huge country, people with different ethnic backgrounds. So to manage that kind of a country, what we need is to promote harmony throughout the country. So what are the things that we really emphasize always is justice. In order to maintain order, in order to keep peace in the entire society, what we promote is the fundamental rights, directive principles. When we talk about liberty, yes, you can do whatever you want, but with that strict control. So liberty word is nothing but is the freedom that people enjoys in the country. When it comes to fraternity, it is nothing but the feeling of brotherhood, which is practiced. It's a kind of, I would say, an emotional attachment, an emotional bond that you share when you reside in this country. Now, another thing, when you attempt any question on the Constitution or Preamble, make sure you mention about the 42nd Amendment Act. That is very, very important. It was this Amendment Act that the terms secular and integrity were added to the Preamble. Then let us come to the basic features of the Indian Constitution. The first and foremost, when you introduce the Indian Constitution, you should first say that it is the largest constitution. It is a written constitution. Now this feature also we have taken, yes, we have the American Constitution which is written, and we have partly unwritten thing which we have borrowed from the UK Constitution. In fact, Sir Ivor Jennings have always said that India has the largest and a very, very detailed constitution. Minute to minute details have been included, and today we have around 470 articles, 12 schedules, 25 parts, and 104 amendments have taken place. The last amendment, let me tell you, it was on 25th January 2020 that was accepted, right? Then we have these terms: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. which we have already studied in the preamble. Exactly those terms must be there when you attempt any question on the Constitution. When you read about the Constitution, first thing you should remember those words. We are sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic. Then we come to the parliamentary form of government. Now, India has a parliamentary form. Now, when I say parliamentary, we have a strong center, which is in Delhi right now, which is the center, and state governments. Every state has a right to run their own governments. Now, in this entire, when we talk about parliamentary system of government, remember, president is at the apex. President is at the highest position. He is at the apex of the constitution hierarchy. But if you see, it is a very unique country. It is a parliamentary form of government, but the real power, the executive power, lies in the hands of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. Then comes the fundamental rights. Now, this is something, I would say, it is the heart and soul of the Indian Constitution. From Article 12 to Article 32, we deal with all the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution, and this entire thing is in Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. Another very, very unique feature of this fundamental rights is the High Court, the Supreme Court, makes sure that to protect this fundamental rights, we have something called writs, W-R-I-T-S. There are 5 writs that we follow. I have mentioned it in the PPT: mandamus, habeas corpus, prohibition, certiorari, and quo warranto. Right? When somebody's fundamental rights gets exploited, the person has the full right to go to the court, to appeal in the court. And all courts, when I say all courts, Supreme Court and High Court, they have that right to investigate the case and give in favor of the person whose rights are getting exploited. Okay? And High Court has this power to enforce these rights with the Article 226. Then comes the directive principles. Again, I would say it is something which is very, very complementary. It goes hand in hand. Directive principles are certain directives. They are not enforceable in the court of law. They are kind of directives which the states ensure that they have to follow. It is a kind of, I would say it is a right which people enjoy, but the right which cannot be enforceable by the court of law. Right? And it is contained in the Part 4 of the Indian Constitution. And the inspiration for these directive principles comes from the Constitution of Ireland. Then comes the universal adult suffrage, something very, very important. Most important, why? Because we belong to a democracy. It's a huge democracy that we are talking about. It's a very unique country, and we have people from different ethnic backgrounds. So this universal adult suffrage gives the right to every person when they attain the age of 18 to cast their vote. It is a right to elect your own representatives who will decide on your behalf. And these representatives are, we can see them in the parliament, in the union, and also the state legislature. Then comes the federal constitution with a centralizing tendency. This is also something very, very unique to our country. Now, it is one of the most important features, especially, remember all of you, this becomes very, very important during the times of emergency, during the times of war. When center takes away the power, states have no role to play. It has happened during extreme emergency like 1997 Babri Masjid demolition, right? The union decides during this proclamation of emergency, distribution of power undergoes a thorough change, right? And the president takes charge, president decides everything. Then comes the independent judiciary, again a very, very important feature which we have borrowed from the US Constitution, American Constitution. Establishment of the judiciary with the power of judicial review, to review every case. That right lies in the hands of judiciary, all just to protect the rights of the people, remember that. And Supreme Court, also remember, it is the highest court of the country, it is the guardian, it is the most important interpreter of the Constitution. Then we have something called, very, very important. This feature is very, very important. It is something called single citizenship. Though, if you go to US, you will see there is a double citizenship, right? So if I'm from Bengal, if I'm from West Bengal, I cannot say I am Bengali. That is not my identity. It is, I am Indian. I speak only about one thing, that is single citizenship. What is it? Though we have a federal structure, right? Citizenship belongs to the country only. That means I will always say I am an Indian. When I say secular state, okay, it is something very, very important. Why secular? It is completely neutral. Okay, the state will completely give you the rights to protect your own religion. If you go through the fundamental rights from Article 25 to Article 28, it talks about how you can protect, how you can propagate, how you can practice your own religion, and no state, no government can interfere into it. The last part, the fundamental duties, which is in part 4A by Article 51A, when it was, first it was introduced, there were 10 fundamental duties that were given to us. But by the 86th Amendment Act 2002, we got the 11th fundamental duties, and today we have these 11 fundamental duties, which is very, very important because rights and duties goes hand in hand. You can enjoy your rights, but you as citizen also have to do certain duties, and that is enshrined in Article 51A. With that, today I am concluding my M.O.P classroom. Thank you.